Hello. Hello again. Hello to everybody who exists and who does not exist and might exist. My name is Connor. I'm your host for the one not stop not, want not, do not. Your one way stop for all things games related. Maybe anime actually now. This is Connor Talks Games, and today we actually got a fun little episode that I'd like to cover. I did actually want to address something before we start. Recently, I have been getting one or two people who have been asking in regards to when I will be doing another question episode. I will be sure to take that into account a little bit down the line, but right now there were just some things that I had on the back burner that I wanted to address, such as getting another guest, possibly talking about some more games, and of course, maybe throwing in specifically actually a Subnautica episode might be fun, but nah. So let's kind of get into it. So if the mic quality sounds a little different, I'm recording in a different location. I'm not in my usual studio at the moment, so I apologize. But I got my Xbox One, and sometimes when I come back down for a little bit, I like to boot her up and kind of play some games on it. Obviously a little bit of Devil May Cry, Halo Master Chief Collection, get your Gears of War, a little bit of Halo 5 because I still have one friend who's like, "Ah, we should play Firefight," and I'm like, "Dude, why do you exist? If not just to make me suffer." But one time this week, I double checked the date, and it was around the start, or we're getting to June very soon, and it hit me. I have to make my yearly pilgrimage as Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel. Now, for those who don't know, I don't really know if I talked about it too much. Another game growing up that I played a lot of was actually the original Mass Effect series. Um, I started with two. Technically speaking, I had one as well, but I was a young kid and I didn't know any better. But two was kind of where I properly soaked my feet into the franchise and started giving it a spin. And then I remember many years after that, in 2013, maybe it was like 15 or 16, I can't remember the exact date. I picked up Mass Effect 3. And this is back when they had like the Connect that they were heavily pushing. So it had all these weird gameplay features, but we'll get around to that. So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences with it, what I liked, what I didn't really like, and we'll kind of just go from there. So let's take it from the beginning. The original Mass Effect. Let me pull up some information here on it real quick, but it really it don't get much more OG than the original Mass Effect. Back when BioWare made actually good, solid story, action, adventure, role playing games that not only reacted based on the choices you made, but actively had consequences and benefits and all of that. So, you know, came out in 2007. Graphics looked exactly how you would expect a 2007 game to look like. But surprisingly, it had a really kick ass story. There was this intrigue in being this hyper elite commander soldier who, based on your backstory, you were a survivor after a incident gone wrong, or you were this blood hardened veteran that did the ruthless missions that nobody else wanted, or you were a hero that held off this entire situation in which you were against insurmountable odds and cemented yourself as a hero. And what I always liked is Mass Effect pushes you kind of down one of two paths. You can be this Paragon guy who is very more or less willing to cooperate with alien species, and generally speaking, well, politically, a lot of the races that you interact with in the setting are out for themselves and they're making it really difficult for you to like them. You're generally open minded and very just kind of trying to play on their good side and not attempt to do anything bad. Whereas Renegade, which is more, you're a badass, you don't give a shit about what other people think. You're here to get the job done. And if that means shooting an innocent or getting rid of somebody who knows something, then so be it. Case in point, when you're on a certain snow planet, you may or may not put a round in between the guards who are preventing your investigation, even though they're innocent, they weren't doing anything, which I always thought was pretty funny. Vermeer, Pharos, and Ilo, so those were fun. But the so I want to like get this right out of the gate right now while I can. I did not like the base gameplay of the first game. I thought it was booty cheeks. It was clunky, unintuitive. The cover system was Meleeing people felt like I was punching a piece of plywood with weak bone structure. And then, of course, there was like 1,000 different issues I had with not only the leveling system, the armor system, the freaking Mako, which I'm talking original Mass Effect here, not the legendary one, which I will get around to talking about. Just baseline protocol Mass Effect. And no, I didn't like it. I didn't like that. But it was serviceable, and we had a lot of really fun characters. Now, I'm about to say it, and probably this character comes up at least once every top 10 characters of all time in a video game. Garrus Vakarian, the biggest bro in the galaxy, and also the most popular femship romance pick for people in the second and third games, respectively. Although, let's be real here, anyone would pick Garrus, even myself. Just amazing man. The guy's awesome. I love Garrus. Garrus is cool. Garrus, for those who do not know, is a disgruntled police officer in the first game who is trying to chase after the big bad, Saren, because not only is Saren actively making his species look bad by instigating the return of the big bad in the first game, and also assisting the boogeyman, the Geth, who are like these robots that are very, very, very scary. They get more intelligent the more of them there are in a room or just in an area. But other than that, not very smart. We call them light bulbs, big flashlights, big funny. But Garrus wants to put a stop to it, and he's tired of going through the normal channels. So he tells you, "Hey, can I join you?" And you go, "Yeah, I want to do that." And you guys work together, and then you bring him down. It's awesome. Rex is another of my favorites. Rex is a I think he's a 7 foot tall, 400 pound Krogan, and a Krogan, I guess if I had to put it, is like if you took a G wagon and you slapped it on a 7 foot tall hippo that is standing upright and has the ability to hit you with this funny thing called biotics, which is like the force, but not the force because it's element weird stuff. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but picture a person throwing a ball at you. The ball explodes. You stop moving. Life is good. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about that in a minute, but let's kind of keep going along here a little bit. Another character who is probably one of the other most popular romance options in the second and third game, Tally, who is a Quarian, a race of spacefaring species that focuses on having these sealed off hazmat suits because they cannot pretty much deal with the environment around them as they have been on sterilized ship environments for like the past couple centuries. And they're just really cool. I always thought the suit design was really beautiful. And then, of course, I romanced the shit out of Tally because she's adorable. That's not the point. And then, yeah, I mean, two soldier options. You had Ashley, who I didn't give a shit about, Caden, who I didn't give a shit about. And then, of course, can't forget Liara, who's like the ditzy Asari. If I had to describe it, it's a blue female looking creature that may or may not be a parasite, but there are many videos that do that. Art Yakshi fans, hit me up. Jeez. But no, those are just some of the companions, and then of course, something that I really genuinely thought was neat is they had this really interesting take on space powers because it's a modern setting. You know, you're using guns and shit. So how do they kind of get away with it? Well, the in-game setting of it is called biotics, and biotics is the ability of some life forms to create Mass Effect fields using this in-game element called Element Zero, and it allows them to channel gravity, use powers, or create things to provide them with assistance. And this can be amplified through the use of a bioamp, which is like this biotic amplifier, this amp that allows you to channel your powers, and they're kind of like plugged in to the individual. You just like slot it in like a hard drive, I guess, which I thought was really funny. But it allows them to do all kinds of stuff. And the thing about Mass Effect that is always neat is the class variety, at least second game onward, is insane. So you could play like a default soldier, you get all the guns and shit. But a really neat way they balance it out in later games. And if you couldn't tell, I'm done talking about Mass Effect 1. There's not much to talk about. It had an amazing story. It had some romance options. And of course, it had Garrus and Rex. That's all you need to know. If you ever play Mass Effect 1, everything else is irrelevant. Rex is my boy, and I love Rex. Krogan is the best species, don't even at me. But I had fun with it, and the class system just gets better in Mass Effect 2. Now, what I really like about the series is your choices have consequences going all the way over. So this may be spoiler territory, but you're listening to me, so shut up and deal with it. In Mass Effect 2, Shepard wakes up after being spaced, and he gets quizzed on his actions in the first game. And in the first game, it's like you leave somebody behind to die. You can choose to save the council or not, which are like this. It's the democratic voice of some of the species that earn the right to speak on the highest possible council. And you could save that original council, or you can let them die. And then from there, you can choose to instate a human run council, which is good for the interests of humanity, but it causes a lot of species to be upset. Or you can save them. It will cost you down the line because obviously the humanity suffers. One third of its fleet gets lost after fighting the big bad, but it reinforces that humanity is willing to step in and provide assistance to the other races of the galaxy instead of for their unselfish gain, which I thought was really neat. But getting back to the classes real quick in the second game. So that's where it really hits off. Now, if it wasn't apparent, Mass Effect has a variety of classes and builds, and they have powers that kind of focus on that. Now, if you've never played the game before and you have no idea what's going on, then you really can't get any better than to start with the soldier. And the thing about the soldier in baseline Mass Effect, not getting crazy, is that it can use any gun. It uses them efficiently, and it focuses more on powers and ammunition upgrades. So throughout the game, you can program your weapon to shoot incendiary ammo. Now the enemy you shoot, if it's got a red health bar, is going to freak out, start burning, and it prevents regeneration. Or you could hit them with cryo ammo, or you can disrupt shields with disruptor ammo, or you could shred anything that identifies as organic with shredder ammunition. Just a whole variety of ammunition types on your guns. And this can be very powerful for weapons that, quite frankly, don't like certain enemies. That Widowmaker sniper rifle that you have in your back pocket, well, you just put a 27-inch hole in that Geth in the far back because he called you fat. And I didn't like that. Of course, it also puts an emphasis on shields and health and a bunch of other things. Just a good all rounder. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is like an extreme comparison for all intents and purposes, is the adept. And if the soldier had some abilities that you could use with a rather lengthy cooldown if you wanted to run all weapons, the adept is the exact opposite. Because the adept is if you took the power side of it, like the abilities that you can cast, and you cranked it up to 27. They carry like a single gun. You don't get heavy armor with them. It's usually light. That's actually, excuse me, that's the first Mass Effect. You can equip any armor you want in the second game, but their weapon training is very limited, usually just like a pistol and a submachine gun. But it gives you the best selection of biotic abilities because you're effectively working on the synergy of shredding targets with your biotic abilities and using your gun to either finish them off or take pot shots when your abilities are on cooldown. It's not the most beginner friendly, I would say, because it forces an emphasis on managing ability cooldown. And obviously, you're probably more used to gunning the shit out of whatever's in front of you, but you still get your heavy weapon if you're unsure. Like, what's a fun ability? So in Mass Effect 2, there is a rewarding emphasis on using biotics to combine with other abilities. For instance, there's an ability called Singularity, which creates a grapple point that will pull targets into it and cause them to float. In order to capitalize on this, you can shoot normally, which is fine, or you can take the cool option and you can use concussive shot, which will explode the target, like instantly delete them from existence, and that's a soldier based ability. So there's like this really neat thing where you can kind of start taking certain operatives that do certain things, and you could do that in the first game, like, oh, I could take this guy and they can do that for me, but it really doesn't take off until the second game. Those are just some example, like the two crazy opposite end of the spectrum of classes. You have in betweens. Let's say you really like soldier, but you want some biotic abilities, Vanguard. You turn yourself into a bison on steroids. You run at a target, they go boom, they stop breathing. It's really funny. Solid option later on if you're looking for something a little bit more kind of on the defensive side is this what's its face? Let's say you really like engineer. Engineer is the I create turrets, I create drones, and I hunker down a location. But maybe you want a mix of that. You could be a sentinel. A sentinel combines tech abilities with biotics, and you have a ability called tech armor, which allows you to create a hard line of defense with your armor. And at higher levels, you can just make it so that not only does it boost your shields, but you just explode the target in front of you. So it's very neat. And the game does actually allow you to port your character from the previous game over to the new one. We're getting around to the Legendary Edition, but don't wait. But I just think that's really neat. That game as well, I was always fond of Grunt. Grunt is a Krogan who is created by like this 1,000-year-old warlord who thinks that the mass sterilizing of his race was actually a blessing in disguise because it removed the weakness from their gene pool. And he spends like, I think it's a century trying to create this ultimate version of his species. And after thousands of failed attempts and giving the rejects to a mercenary leader, he gets it right. You go to find him, he dies. You get that. It's adorable. But the game, it's a suicide mission, and you need to make sure everybody is on their A game. So how do you do that? Well, you take loyalty missions, the story, well, it's not as strong as the first one. The gameplay, in my opinion, definitely made up for it. But really, it the gameplay, if we had to take a step back in story and exchange that for gameplay, that's where Mass Effect 3 comes in. So the hate was definitely justified in some areas, such as the endings and the overall story plot. Like in the second game, you are a part of a human supremacy group that they bring you back because they're the only ones willing to do something about disappearing human colonies. And, it's very evident that what this is more of an alliance of convenience. They're bringing you back because they believe that you can do the job and you're the best human that can do the said job. So you cooperate with them, you do that, you go to this area, and you do the suicide mission. And then in like the third game, all the mystery and intrigue from the main villain of that organization, he just gets turned into a typical power hungry tyrant. It removes all of the credibility that that faction had. It was just like, why would I ever bother in my life to do that when I could just do something else? So what are you gonna do? But anyways, the third game. So Mass Effect 3 is interesting in that, in my opinion, it's not even really my opinion, it's just factual. It had the best gameplay upgrade. Classes were overhauled. It had a really fun multiplayer component. And on top of that, it was, in every sense of the word, an absolute riot to run around and play that game. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it. Now, it had some highlights, and Mass Effect is one of those games that will make you cry, depending. If you are Renegade Shepherd in Mass Effect 3, then you are probably going to suffer tremendously. If you are Paragon, you'll have a great time. It's difficult. But if you want to have the ultimate gut punch, be a renegade and betray the Krogan, but have it so that Rex was your ally in the first game and you didn't kill him because it hits harder and it's awesome. I shouldn't say that, but it's funny. But let's kind of get back on topic here. So the gameplay difference in 3 is that they double down effectively on everything that made 2 like gameplay wise great. So ammunition not only causes chain reaction explosions depending on what you pick, but now you can cause biotic explosions when you mix certain powers. So again, going back to singularity and custom shot, my soldier that I brought with me, who normally doesn't have a lot of synergy with biotic powers, all of a sudden is capable of having the adept that I brought with me cause a character to go up into the air and then delete them from existence, which is very handy if you didn't already tell at pretty much deleting everything off of the roster. Now, let me try to remember now because there were a couple of power combos that were introduced, such as priming and freaking exploding, detonating, comboing, like all that. It just all the fun stuff. So there are fun special combos that can be combined into one. So take the combat drone, for instance, right? It has a ability where if you choose to spec more into the detonation side of things, will actually explode, dealing damage to a target. And what's really funny is this explosion can detonate fire, cryo, tech combos, and it can even detonate the warp effect of a biotic sphere, which is another ability that kind of gets done. Now, the interesting thing is even grenades can do it, but it's weird because your main weapon needs to have a certain ammo modification equipped, and then the grenade will then, if it detects that that detection is on the weapon, it will activate the cryo effect or whatever it is. But I just think that it's really neat how you can trigger multiple combos depending on what you do. So, I do a thing where I lift them up in the air, and my weapon has a fire based ammunition type on incendiary. And from there, what I can do is I can select another character who has some type of ability when it comes to like freezing or whatever. And that will prime the target, and then I can throw a cluster grenade at them, and then it'll cause multiple explosions. So it's just neat how I can do that. But another fun one is the multiplayer. And the multiplayer, so I didn't sink too much time into the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer because it's a loot box system in order to unlock new stuff. And there's like this weird thing where it was really DLC dependent on certain things. But if there was one thing about it that I really enjoyed, it had so much replayability. So it the way like it works is it's a PvE horde based wave mode where you and X amount of people team up and you kind of go around taking care of targets that are spawning in waves. And you could pick between any of like the major factions that would normally spawn in. And they bring back the enemy from the second game as a DLC, and I thought that was really neat. But to kind of like demonstrate, that everyone in the galaxy is fighting together, you have different races that you could pick from. You could be a Krogan, you could be an Asari, you could be a human soldier, you could do a lot of stuff. And they have races with the bonuses that allow you to do certain things with character customization. But all the unique, I think it's like 65 unique individual races. If I'm based, the wiki here is anything to go off. Like, yeah, hold on. Let me look up my favorite class. So those who don't know, one of my favorite DLCs for that game was actually the Omega one. Top one is the Citadel one, obviously, but there was a character from there that they brought with the advent of that DLC, and I thought that it was really cool. Just let me try to find them real quick here. Uh, yep. So it was a Talon mercenary in that multiplayer mode, and it had this really cool ability where you could load a crossbow on your character. So, like, it's a combat engineer working for a unscrupulous mercenary organization that doesn't really give a shit. You know, Omega is already in the Terminus systems, which in game description is a bad place to be in general. But it's funny because these are shady mercenaries that are taking an investment with the professional human military to fight the Reapers. Now, something that I liked is you have an emphasis on being a long-ranged individual that pretty much grenades a target. And what's really funny is I've always liked grenades in this game. So a lot of the things you can do revolve around that. So it'd be like, all right, I'm getting ready to create a tech burst, so I blast you with arrows, get you up in the air, and then you explode, and then the incendiary rounds cause you to detonate and die. Or, oh no, you're coming at me. Let me just put a trip mine right here and explode you and cause you to stop going. And remember, your powers come back as quickly as you have less weight. So you could bring like an entire fucking arsenal with you and call it a day. Or you can use your powers to blow shit up, and it's nice. But another one is I think it's the Krogan warlord with the big hammer. So in the game, depending on who you pick as well, like a species will have a different melee. And the thing about the Krogan is you can't take cover with him. He's completely unable to take cover. He doesn't run very fast, and he's a big target. You know what that big target has? A big angry hammer. And he's going to hit you with it. And it's not going to be a pretty sight when your family discovers that you became an abstract concept on the wall. So you can upgrade the hammer as well to have different elemental effects. And one of my favorite I love to do is you can activate a blood rage on the Krogan, cause him to run in a straight line and smack something really hard with the hammer, and then prime that detonation with the hammer because it's an incendiary one, and boom, you're on fire. You don't exist anymore because you're on the ground dead, and you are gone, reduced to atoms. So it's really funny to be able to do that. Although I don't really ever think I got any normal modification out of the normal Krogan soldier once I unlocked him, because why would I ever bother going back to just the default guy when I can get a big ass hammer? Yeah, the Krogan Warlord Sentinel, that was the guy I love playing. You have a big ass battle hammer, you slap a guy with a headbutt, and you can proceed to casually snap things, but you cannot dodge. That is a goofy thing. You cannot dodge. So you're mostly there to tank damage. But that's kind of like my take on it. Honestly, this has been more of a rant about just what I like, but honestly, the story is great in like the first game at least, but like the other two are also good, and the gameplay is relatively solid. But if you want to play a game, an action RPG that not only tracks your story based on the decisions that you make from the first game all the way up to the third game, I would highly recommend it. My name is Connor. This has been Connor Talks Games. I sincerely thank you for listening to the entirety of this episode, and I hope to see you next week when I discuss, I don't know, I'll discuss something. Maybe Subnautica. Subnautica might be fun. Honestly, I'm just also thinking about Chaotic right now. But all right, that's me. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you next time.